Hello everyone, this is SovietRussianBear and Joaquin Flores is back with me after, I don't know, 4 months, yeah? Okay, Joaquin, so I've been wondering recently, why is Europe, like the European leaders, European Union, I mean mainly the big players in Europe like France, Germany, the United Kingdom, why are they so eager in Russia's destruction? They are way more eager to destroy Russia than, let's say, the United States under Donald Trump, and you see, man, a lot of people say that, oh, Europe is just a docile puppet of the United States. Whatever the US says, Europe does. But if it is true, then why don't the European players seek peace with Russia? Because Donald Trump also seeks peace with Russia. He said that we need a deal, but the Europeans are hindering that deal. They just want a war. They just want war with Russia. They reject. They hate. They despise Trump. They reject his peace initiatives. Like, well, what the hell?
Yeah, it's several questions, right? I mean, you're asking basically why is Europe still bent on the destruction of Russia
Yeah.
if it's true that Europe just does what the US says, and since it's true, if we can put that Trump seeks rapprochement with Russia, a normal
Yeah.
relation. How do you want to approach it? I mean, I would say that first of all, um, there was a long time after World War II that the United States and Europe, that the elites became very intertangled, very, cross-invested. And that's an economic fact. It's also supported by the intelligence agencies, the media, culture, education culture, popular culture, journalism. There's a lot of think tanks dedicated to that, transatlanticism. But I think the best way to briefly answer tightly the first question would be to break it down in terms of there's a inter-elite conflict in Atlanticism, or if you prefer intra-elite, but we'll use the word inter-elite to be succinct. There's an inter-elite conflict between elites in the West, and they still have power in the United States, but they're losing power. They don't have power very much at the level of the executive branch and the presidency in the United States, but they still have power in Western Europe. So maybe that is a good way to approach it. And the United States is looking at what Europe is doing, and they understand that whole sections of the Western elite that controlled Washington, that still have power in the intelligence services in the United States, but not total power. They still have power at the senatorial level and the congressional, or House of Commons level, House of Representatives. So it's something where you have a fractured West. You have a big division in the West, and Europe, the powers in Western Europe, they're hoping that in the elections in end of 2028, that they get someone more in line with their policies back in power in Washington. So they're trying to wait it out. That's why they're pushing for a ceasefire. They don't want to end the conflict. They want to freeze the conflict and rearm.
Yes.
They want to rearm and stabilize Ukraine. They want to maybe send in European forces. And if you read headlines and you look at the news, they're always talking about 2030 as a year. Between 2030 and 2032, they're going to resume the conflict against Russia. So that explains the
Mhm.
dates that they're using. It
Mhm.
explains their strategy. It doesn't tell us why they still want to destroy Russia, but in terms of answering your question, like how come Europe and the US seem to have these different
Yeah.
approaches to Russia, different policies? I mean, one is peace and trade and the other is war and destruction. I mean,
Yes.
these are
Yes.
not a little bit different. These are like black and white differences.
Yes. Yes.
And the Western European powers they are pushing for a return to power in the United States of someone like Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris or someone who did whatever Joe Biden was doing. But yeah, that really is the tightest way to explain that, you know. But it doesn't explain like why they're bent on destroying Russia. It just explains why there's two policies. You know, there's a division between the Western powers,
Yeah.
within the Western powers. So, but I could get into what's going on in Europe's head.
Yeah. And I see, man, Russia and China and Putin, we take advantage of this division.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, it should be exploited. And
Yeah.
the Europeans or the EU and the Atlanticist globalists in the United States, I mean, we still have all kinds of crazy people trying to push on Russia. So, but yeah, that division, that divide should definitely be leveraged and exploited because uh, it's a responsibility that you guys have. It's normal statecraft, and
Hmm.
Europe has to see that there's no alternative, you know, to normalization and trade. The policies of war, a war they cannot afford, you know, like kind of doubles the ridiculousness of their position.
Mm. Well, Joaquin, I've seen how history goes, man. Well, first, it's all like good and peace and trade and friendship between Russia and European players. But then, like, something hits in the head and they bam! And like, no, it's no longer profitable for us to trade with Russia. War on Russia. We must take. We don't want to buy Russia's resources. We must take. We'll loot them. Something every 100, every 200 years, something strikes the Europeans on the head, and they say, "Oh no, war with Russia. Take their resources. Looting is better than trading." I'm sorry. Just had to get this off my chest.
Yeah, I mean it's a good question. It's like religion. It's like a religion and that they have in
Sorry.
Europe, and you can see that there's a lot of normal people in Western Europe. They don't always make it into politics, but they're normal people. They
Mhm.
understand the futility of a war with Russia. But these institutions, these Atlanticist structures, the academic and diplomatic arena, economic, you have bureaucrats and they're raised, inculcated in
Mhm.
you know, there's these different movements within them. And you definitely have a anti-Russia cult. It's a cult. I mean, it's like a religion, a small religion, and you see it in the press. You see it, and they're just. This is sort of just like at the foundation of it. They don't really have a reason why Russia is so bad, but people like Madeleine Albright in the past have been the most clear or honest about the problem. The problem is that Russia is too big and that they can't control it. And they had this idea long ago in a world before China and India were economic powerhouses. They were relatively underdeveloped. I mean, they had village economies. China was so long divided, trying to recover from internal fractions, European colonialism, the warlord period, the Japanese occupation, and that's kind of those are the struggles that gave rise to the success of modern China. as a economic power, large population, geopolitical hegemon in many respects. So in the world before that didn't exist, Yuri. And they had a theory that Russia could be, if you cut Russia off from Europe, then you really cut them off from the developed world. And that's just not true anymore. But they have these ideas that are very similar to ideas that Germans had in World War II and in the 30s. And again, even back then, you had an underdeveloped China and underdeveloped India, and there was really not much to speak about the economies in South Asia, Indochina, or Latin America, or the Middle East. Now you have a lot of developed economies, and it's just being cut off from trade with Europe is, it would be nice not to be, but it's not going to ruin Russia either way. Sure, it would be nice if they were polite people and they could do business. That would be good. No one's saying that it would be bad, but if they insist on collective suicide, you don't want to, you don't want to give them no alternative. You want to always look for ways that they can come to their senses, but they're bent on this. Now, in more practical terms, they're like all invested in these outcomes in Ukraine. Like they've built whole investment schemes around what they could profit in the future off of what they can get out of Ukraine. Like the parts of Ukraine that Russia has now, they still think, they don't really think that they can get it, but understand how investment works and the people that are on board. If you were to actually make the announcement that this is no longer our goal, then the whole thing comes undone. The whole pyramid scheme basically comes undone. So they have to hold on to this mythology that in the future they'll get it back. There are many speculative financial and financialized interests in Western Europe and the City of London that they can't tell the truth to this whole structure of speculators that they actually remove the commitment to take it back. So the rhetoric is all that they really have, but they can't let go of the rhetoric. It's going to make this whole speculative bubble basically pop or evaporate. So there's that economic part of it, so there's the religious part of it, there's the economic part of it, and then to explain why the US and Europe have extremely different policies, we're looking at a strong division in the Western elite. I mean, the Western empire is going down. And when empires go down, it causes conflict within the elites. So that's the model in all history. Like, that's not like a new development that we're discovering for the first time by looking at things happening between Brussels and New York, or between Berlin and London and Washington. These are not new developments in understanding history. This is almost like an iron law of all of history. Whenever empires kind of start to shake at their foundations, whenever the contradictions of their socio-political economic models start to be uncertain, you get fight between the elites. And you saw the elections in the United States, you saw the big fighting inside the United States, and those same people in the US who lost, they still have power in Europe. Like, they don't think about nations, they're globalists. And if they can be kicked out of power in one place, but until they're out of power everywhere, they're still going to be holding on to their policy, so.
Joaquin, I don't know. Well, people say that you want Europe to love Russia. Like, no, All I want from Europe is to leave Russia the fuck alone. Leave us the fuck alone, please. What are you gonna do? What are we gonna do for that? What do we need to do? If we need to turn Europe into fucking nuclear wasteland in order to so that they leave us the fuck alone, okay, so be it, man. Just leave Russia. Leave Russia the fuck alone, please, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, you see this type of crazy rhetoric from the Europeans. Like I was saying, you have a lot of more sane people in Western Europe, even in finance, in politics, in industry. There's huge problems in Germany, huge pushback against Merz, destroying the German economy, their price of energy. You look at what's happening to Volkswagen right now. They don't even have money for research and development to come out with new models, you know. So there's going to be a huge reduction in production. They can't really pay to keep the lights on. And then you hear them talking about stealing the Russian money, stealing these hundreds of billions of dollars from Russia that they seized illegally.
Yeah, it's
So
theft.
it's theft, but it makes them look really bad, and they have awareness of this. They have awareness that you know, like, you would think it's hard, or rather, you would think maybe it's easy. A person might think it's easy to come up with $200-300 billion because in our minds, you know, governments can print those, but that's not the same thing as real money that already was printed and owned by somebody, that the value is part of the economy that existed, you know, in the past tense. So that's actual money, as opposed to creating more money today out of thin air. That's just general currency debasement. You know, it's basically a tax on every existing euro that really is there. I mean, those, of course, generated by debt-driven GDP growth themselves, but we're saying at any given moment in time. So this money that was seized, the European seizure of the Russian assets with 350 billion euros or something, that's real money in terms of at this moment in time. And they would love to spend that on their own economy. Like, it sounds crazy, but they have pumped so much money into this war on the idea that there's trillions of dollars of raw materials and assets in Ukraine that they can extract if they can pull Ukraine into their economic world. And that's a lot of what this conflict is about. They think they would like to, you know, they like to think they're telling the investor class that, yeah, there's still a chance that we can get back the Crimea. There's still a chance that we can get back Lugansk and Donetsk in 2030, in 2031. So that's meant to keep people that are invested in, you know, continue to be plugged into that scheme. And a lot of these things are faceless, and, you know, they're bureaucratic. They're an individual investor that was really making decisions for himself would see the writing on the wall and they wouldn't go in. But this is actually it speaks too much to the entire economy at this point. Like, they reckon that they would have a much bigger problem on their hands if they entered into a peace with Russia, which recognized those regions as Russia. So, you know, but it's like a religion too. Like, people are, and it's stronger in the former Warsaw Pact countries. It's stronger in Poland. It's stronger in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Like, think about Kaya Kallas. You think about the politicians that they produce, and they are inculcated in this Russophobic cult. Like, it's a religion for them. And, you know, it really harkens back to ideas that were lamentable because they were warmongering ideas, but they were quasi-realistic in terms of what they thought was possible, at the end of the 19th century, right?
Hmm.
Like the dudes who were in Germany in the Third Reich and people that were making policy decisions about let's attack Russia, Soviet Union, let's divide it up, let's ethnically cleanse, 2/3 of the Slavs, let's push them to Siberia, let's send them on a death march, let's carve the Soviet Union into 25 different countries that we can each manage, divide and conquer. They had these delusions from the 19th century, like the dudes that were making decisions in World War II on the German, well, on all the sides, but especially we're talking about the losing side, the Germans, they were born like in 1880. They were born like in the 19th century. So they have these 19th century ideas about what's possible. And, you could make the argument that even in World War II, they had a plausible theory, military theory about taking on the Soviet Union. And that's what they did. And then they lost. Then we enter into like the nuclear age and mutually assured destruction in the Cold War. And they didn't try to attack Russia or the Soviet Union militarily, but they did undermine it at the level of intelligence. I mean, Gorbachev didn't come from nowhere. Yeltsin didn't come from nowhere. So they had successes in internally causing divisions politically in the absence of a viable military strategy, right? But now you have a strong state. Again, this is like cyclical in Russian history, like strong leaders and then weak leaders, strong leaders and then weak leaders. And
That's
they made
correct.
successes in the time, yeah, they made successes in time when you had weak leadership. But with the coming of Putin, they're not able to do this.
Yeah,
So,
man. Speaking of leadership, I've seen people a lot in the comments of my sorry YouTube channel saying that, oh, just Europe just need to get the globalist elites out, and the elites like Orban, Fico, like National Rally in France, or I'm sorry, AfD in Germany, they will make just, bro, man. I am not naive. I don't trust Orban. I don't trust Fico. I don't trust Alternative AfD. I don't trust Rally National. These are all European elites are some sort of Russophobic, man. Just some in a some in a lesser or a more degree, in a lesser or greater degree Russophobic, man. I don't trust Orban, Fico, Le Pen. No, they are pro-Hungary, Orban pro-Hungary, Fico pro-Slovakia, France, Le Pen is pro-France, AfD is pro-Germany. They are all not pro-Russia, man.
they're not pro-Russia, yeah. They're not pro-Russia. But um, they will gain in credibility in the coming months and years, all those parties that you mentioned, and they could win elections. And I think it's good to have a dose of realism, and it's good to look at things that we can't control. I mean, Russia has a very large complex. It's a very large complex. They have tons of mineral wealth. They have a sizable population. That population could grow. You have a very strong advanced military infrastructure, military industrial complex, production far beyond Europe. Europe is thinking about how they can get production up to a fraction of Russia by 2030. So it's just fantasies on the European side, but it's fantasies on the European side. But yeah, I mean, all of these projects in Europe could restore a degree of confidence in the body politic, and then that could be weaponized in the future. But I think it's possible to defeat the globalists in Europe, but it would require, consolidation of what people might call the nationalists in the United States around Trump, around MAGA. There's there's divisions, between the UK and Europe. And, a lot of things can be played, but I share your skepticism or ridiculing the idea that there are pro-Russian parties in Western Europe. I agree with you wholeheartedly. At the same time, they could come to power on the platform of ending the conflict or recognizing Russia's claims in the former Ukraine. And what I'm saying is that about realism is that, Russia is very responsible today. It's possible that in the future, Russia might not have responsible leadership or as good. It just happens.
Yeah.
And Europe could not defend itself from Russia right now unless we're talking about a nuclear exchange. But conventionally, there's really not a good viable, strategy for conventional war. And a lot of times it is good to make it a high cost proposition. Like Europe should worry about their defenses, not from any country in particular, but if they don't have adequate defenses, it's kind of like inviting problems. One of their issues, and this really relates to what you're saying, like even if European elites did have an idea to be strong enough to defend from Russia, like not this Russia, but maybe a future Russia, or if they had a fantasy of attacking Russia, like either way, the neoliberal economic system is not in line with that, and the neo-new left ideology doesn't inspire people to be soldiers in their country. It's like in Germany, people are getting in trouble or being investigated by the intelligence agencies for waving German flags. In the UK, someone was telling me, as if this is like something I should know, for sure it is, but he was explaining to me how the St. George Cross flag, like the flag of England, is considered like a questionable thing. Like they treat it like it's the Confederate flag there. It's like considered racist to have a flag of England in England. Like that is so fucking weird to me. And people, so the migration policy and these things are demoralizing Europeans. You think about France, it's like articulate what France that the French would be defending or fighting for. So yeah, you're right. Like there's a role for National Rally in France or AFD in Germany, and somebody in the UK. I don't think they really have strong candidates. I don't think that
the Reform Party.
I don't think the UK has as strong of a vector. But in France or in Germany, you have this, and it would take like 5 or 10 years of undoing all of the, restructuring the economy. You would need to restructure, their debt obligations. There's a lot of economic theory that they have backwards, how they make money, and then the social policies. The social policies in those countries are not compatible with inspiring young men to join the army and fight in a war that they could die, because there's no fatherland or motherland to defend, and people don't have families the way they used to. People don't have families to defend, So yeah, those do exist, and I don't want to exaggerate, but I mean, if you look at the trends, it's nothing like 50 years ago. And you can see all the statistics and the polling that goes on. Europeans don't believe in Europe, in Western Europe. They don't believe in their country's present form of government. Like they would like to have something to believe in, but it would take like 5-10 years minimum to turn that around. And it's but a lot, again, like you have to understand that this is that Russophobia is an acceptable form of racism that pervades transatlanticism, pervades in America, less now at the official governmental level, but we still have it in the media. We still have it even on Fox News, but there's some divisions there, good. But CNN, you have NBC, ABC, CBS, NPR, public stuff. It's all anti-Russia. It's just built on these assumptions and repetition, and it's aimed at both educated people and it's aimed at regular people that are not as educated and or more average people, and it's pervasive. So yeah, it's like a religion, and it's one of the few acceptable forms of racism in the West, except maybe anti-white racism, but that's internal, right? That's internal, but or reverse racism, so-called. But it's yeah, you raise very good questions, man.
Yeah, Joaquin. And we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to end this on the note that Putin. Let's talk about Putin a little bit more specifically about his patience. Man, the Russian Orthodox Church should consider canonizing him. Why? Because he has such an angelic patience and humility. Man, I don't know. If I was in his place, I would have unleashed nuclear Armageddon years ago, man. And I'm
Yeah,
not
we're
being.
lucky you're not in power. No, I know.
Yes, yes,
I say
we
this all
are
the time.
lucky.
We're lucky.
Yeah, I am not in power, man. Putin is so. I myself, I admire because I lack that compassion, that patience,
Yeah,
that humility,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I mean, it builds trust. He builds trust with his patience and his humility. It's beyond professionalism. It's what you say. It's
Absolutely.
patience and humility, and this builds trust. And the West has lost trust. Trump is trying to rebuild trust. He has a funny way of communicating that has to be interpreted. So he speaks with multiple voices. There's layers to his communication. But at the very highest level, they understand his communications. They interpret them generally correctly. He's not really anti-China. He's not anti-Russia. He's not even anti-North Korea. So these are building trust. It's the idea of win-win. And these are not ideas that are shared by the globalists. They were willing to burn it all down. They were trying to burn it all down. And fortunately, that's not happening. But yeah, but yeah, Putin, yeah, I mean, there are cases of kings, of emperors, of leaders, secular leaders who've been canonized in the past for these things. And, yeah, we'll see when he passes away, someday,
Yeah,
as far away from now as possible. But we'll see, how his body, how fresh his corpse remains. That's also
yeah,
sometimes part of looking at if
yeah,
someone, but yeah, he, the fragrance and the rate of decomposition or the lack of decomposition of his corpse. We'll see, but yeah, it certainly it appears like divinely inspired levels of patience, right,
yeah,
and calm. I think that's a very important face for the Russian state, and his disposition and the way they project the decision-making process in the Russian Federation, in my opinion, is designed to appeal in the West. It's designed to appeal to everyone that deals with Russia, but it has the most promise to appeal to the Germans. And because the Germans have a similar appreciation for this type of professionalism and policy-driven precision. And I think that sort of this precision and reserved quality of the Russian leadership and their formalism is the word I was looking for. That's going to be what that's going to be something that can probably win over the Germans at some point in the future. But like you say, I agree with you about a lot of these parties in Europe, though.
Yeah, Joaquin, we have about 1 minute left. So thank you so much for coming on my channel on the show. I always appreciate when you're around. I enjoy your profound and deep um, and unabashed analysis. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really appreciate your words of support, man, and I'm glad to see you doing what you do.
Yeah, well, I post every day on Telegram, on my YouTube. Recently, I received a community guideline strike, so I couldn't post on YouTube for 3 days. But now it's back. I will continue to post articles and posts and continue to do my work. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Joaquin Flores and Soviet Russian Bear, and that's all we have time for today. So, bye everyone. Peace, love, and prosperity to all those who support me, Joaquin, and Russia. Bye bye. Bye.
Bye.